Hello and welcome to the English Magnet. Today's video, must and have to made easy. Though they express similar ideas, these verbs also play unique roles in English. Must is a modal verb, while have to is not. So knowing their formations and specific roles is crucial. Consequently, we'll go over each one's structure, uses, and common mistakes to watch out for. Obviously, this video is a must. Let's get started. Structure of must. Since must is a modal verb, it means it's followed by the base form of another verb. Let's look at different structures. Positive, subject plus must plus base form. Example, we must lock the door when leaving. Negative, subject plus must plus not plus base form. Or the contraction, mustn't. Example, you must not forget to submit your application by the deadline. Or, you mustn't forget to submit your application by the deadline. Question, must plus subject plus base form. Feel free to add a question word at the beginning of your question. Example, must I finish the project by tomorrow? Why must I finish the project by tomorrow? You can also go for a negative question. Example, must we not inform everyone before making a decision? Or with a contraction, mustn't we inform everyone before making a decision? As you can see, must doesn't change form since it's a modal, except for forming mustn't in the negative form. Structure of have to. While have and have to express different meanings, their structures are pretty much the same. This means that if you know how to conjugate have, you can conjugate have to. Structure-wise, the main difference is that have to is a semi-modal verb, and it's followed by a verb in its base form. Let's look at some forms. Positive, subject plus have or has to plus base form. Example, she has to finish her work on time. Negative, subject plus don't or doesn't plus have to plus base form. Example, she doesn't have to attend the meeting. If the contraction is not your thing, go without. She does not have to attend the meeting. Question, do or does plus subject plus have to plus base form. Example, do you have to leave early? You can also form a negative question by using don't or doesn't. Example, don't you have to leave early? You can add a question word before do or does to form an open question. Example, when do you have to leave? Note that must is limited to the present, while have to can be used in the past, present, and future. To fully grasp this discrepancy, let's look at their meanings. Uses. First, let's look at must. It's usually used to express an obligation, but it holds a wide range of meanings. Here's a breakdown. Personal obligation. Must generally conveys a strong personal sense of obligation. This is the most common way it's used. The speaker thinks that the action, the base form following our modal verb, is a personal responsibility. Example, I must finish my essay today. My teacher set a deadline for submission, and I want to comply. She must apologize to him. The speaker believes apologizing to him is her duty. Rules or commands. Must can also state official rules or regulations. Example, you must follow safety guidelines. It's a command. Employees must wear badges. The company made it a rule to follow. Necessity. Must can express something that is needed. It's close to an obligation, but it's more about a requirement for a certain outcome instead of simple duty. Example, we must book our tickets now. It's necessary if we want to go on our trip. You must remember your password. If you don't, you will not have access to your bank account. Oops. Advice. Must can offer strong suggestions. Example, you must try that new diner. I like it so much, I'm recommending it to you. The children must visit that exhibit before it closes. I advise the kids to go to the museum. Prohibition, must not. Must not or mustn't strongly forbids an action. Example, you mustn't eat in the library. It's prohibited. We must not enter without permission. This action is not allowed. Present deduction or certainty. Must can infer a likely conclusion based on evidence. It expresses a logical assumption with a high degree of certainty, at least from the point of view of the speaker. Example, they must be tired after such a long flight. I haven't seen the people I'm picking up at the airport, but it's safe to say they will be tired, since they've spent a lot of time on a plane. It must be very cold outside. I haven't been outside, but perhaps I see people coming in wearing warm clothes, and the fact that the outdoor temperature has dropped can be considered as a certainty. Past deduction or certainty. By now, you might have noticed that must is usually confined to the present, and you're not wrong. But here's an oddity. Must expresses a past deduction when it's followed by have and a past participle. It allows you to make a logical conclusion about a past situation. Example, she must have left already. The speaker concludes that she left earlier, since she's not home at the moment. They must have heard the news by now. Again, the speaker makes an assumption about a past action, hearing the news. Thanks to some current information, perhaps everybody knows the news now, so it's a foregone conclusion that they heard it as well. Now let's have a look at have to. It's used to express obligations imposed by external factors or requirements, as opposed to must, which focuses on personal obligations. Furthermore, unlike must, have to can be used in all tenses. Let's break it down. External obligation. Have to indicates a requirement often set by outside circumstances. It's very similar in meaning to must, but the obligation is set by others. Example, I have to complete this report by 5 p.m. My boss has set this obligation. She has to wear a uniform. External conditions make this mandatory. Present or past deduction or certainty. Just like must, have to can be used to express a deduction or certainty, but with a greater emphasis on external factors. Example, the store is closed. It has to be their day off. Maybe not the greatest deduction, but still the observation of the closed store leads to an assumption about the store's working days. She had to know the answer. The speaker assumes she knew the answer and states it almost as a certainty. Optional obligation. Don't have to. Don't have to is an interesting case. It implies that something is not required. The meaning of the negative form is not close to the negative form of must. Example, you don't have to come to the meeting. Attending the meeting is optional, up to you. We don't have to bring any materials. Come empty-handed, and that's just fine. Past and future obligations. Here, have to acts as a substitute for must in past and future contexts. Must doesn't have a past or future form. Instead, have to takes up this responsibility. Example in the past. I had to cancel my appointment. The obligation to cancel happened in the past. Example in the future. She will have to study hard for the exam. The obligation to study is going to happen later. Annoyance. Have to can express frustration about burdensome actions. Example. Do they have to talk so loudly? The loud talking is a source of irritation. He always has to make everything a competition. His competitiveness is an inconvenience to the speaker. Common mistakes. Using must in past and future contexts. Example, I must go to the dentist yesterday. Should be, I had to go to the dentist yesterday. Remember, for past or future, must doesn't work. Use had to or will have to. Mixing up negative forms. Example, you mustn't attend if you don't feel like it. Should be, you don't have to attend if you don't feel like it. Mustn't means something is not allowed, while don't have to means it's optional. So even though many positive sentences can use must and have to interchangeably, when dealing with a negative, be mindful of the meaning. In the example, it's clearly an optional obligation, as the clause shows. So only don't have to fits here. Omitting to with have. Example, we will have stopped for gas on the way. Should be, we will have to stop for gas on the way. Always include the preposition to when using have to express an obligation. Otherwise, it sounds a bit clumsy. There you have it, must and have to. The former is almost exclusively used in the present, while the latter can be used across the past, present, and future. You don't have to watch another of our videos, but we'd appreciate it. Hopefully, this has been helpful. A link to some free material to practice by yourselves can be found in the description below. Keep practicing, and you'll get the hang of it. Thank you for watching. Until next time.